we are having a conversation with new author, well, no, seasoned author now because you have a few books under your belt, Miss Scherrie Cooper. And she's a friend of mine. I'm really honored and happy to be having her sit in a seat at the in the courage room because we are about to have a courageous conversation. So welcome, and I hope that you enjoy our conversation today. So Sherry, thank you so much. You look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. I am, as you know, really connected to this book because I was honored to be your editor here. And we'll go back and talk about that. I wanted to just congratulate you for your next book, right? You did your first one, which was
Diary of a Young Queen.
Yes. And so this book is Queenie, Sex, Lies, and Choices. And it also, we need to mention the illustrator, Miss Devani Cooper, who was responsible for the lovely illustration on the front and throughout, I think. So tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll talk about the book and all of the good stuff on the inside.
Okay, great. So my name is Scherrie Cooper. I was born and raised right here in the DC metropolitan area, and went to school in Prince George's County, and been living in Montgomery County for about almost 20 years now. I have always had a desire to talk to young ladies and, just be like that person that they could come to if they needed to just talk to someone. I struggled a lot growing up, like many, in my middle and high school years, based on some things that I was exposed to and some choices that I made because of some of those exposures. And I remember just always struggling with like self-esteem issues and people pleasing and just longing to be loved, just always looking for someone to want me, to listen to me, to accept me. And I struggled with that at a very early age. And because of it, I made some poor choices in my life. And so now as an adult, I decided, well, maybe I can help. Maybe I can talk to someone and maybe share my story, and then maybe they won't kind of do some of the things I did growing up. And so that's what my books are about. They're really my story. Many of them are my stories. I just kind of switched some names and some times, to kind of protect certain people.
The innocent.
And, not so innocent. Right. And not so innocent. Yeah. But they're really my teenage journey through experiences with dealing with the opposite sex, dealing with struggles sexually, addictions, pornography, and just making poor choices. And so I wrapped it all up in the book. And Queenie.
Queenie's our girl.
Queenie's our girl.
Yeah. So in your first book, I know that it was all about Queenie. Yeah. And the not only the choices that she made, but just her stories of her experiences, if we could say it that way. And it was really eye-opening. I think that for many people, it was an opportunity to see that young girl in them in those various stories that were told of Queenie, which, as we're learning, many of them are your stories. With names changed to protect the innocent and not so innocent. Right. But in Queenie's Sex, Lies, and Choices, you went a step further, it feels like. You delved, you made a deeper dive, if I could say that, right, into what was going on in the background of her thinking. And which I'm so honored to be able to say that, really just did some more character development
Yeah.
in letting people see beyond her actions,
Yeah.
right, to her backstory.
Right.
And I love using that. I use that terminology in a lot of places, but we don't always see people in the very moment, right? We see the stuff that led up to that moment.
Yes.
So I feel like in here you get an opportunity to see why Queenie made some of the choices that she made. And then she's got friends.
Oh, yeah.
You brought friends along this time. So we hear the story of, for example, of Yasha, and we hear the story of, give me a couple others.
We have Yasha, we have Ayana, Marley, Lacey. These are some of her friends that you will read about as you navigate through her life.
Yeah.
You learn a little more about why Queenie does some of the things that she does. You'll hear about things that happened to her and her friends when they were small children and what they got exposed to. Yeah. And, unfortunately, some of the decisions they made based on some things that happened early on in their life.
Yeah. On that, as a result of that exposure, right? And I heard someone saying it just recently. They were saying, instead of asking people what's wrong with you, right? Ask people what happened to you. And it just resonates, doesn't it? Because instead of judging the behavior, and like I was just saying, what you see in the moment, right? Yeah. I don't want to judge what's showing up now. I want to ask what happened, right, to create what we're seeing right now.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. These young ladies, they didn't just arrive at a decision. It's like, it was kind of like things they saw, things they experienced. And so they're just making decisions based on what they think is right at the time.
Yeah. Your history determines your pathology sometimes, right? Yeah. And then that pathology determines kind of your future and the rest of your story. So if you want to just talk a little bit about how the chapters in the book are put together. I see that there's the story, which we can go through, and then you also make it really interactive.
Yes, interaction is very important to me. I work with young people a lot, and you have to have that interaction. It's not enough just to put a story in their face. It's like you have to ask questions. You have to create dialogue. And so this is a workbook, and I put it together to create dialogue, conversation, to for people to start thinking a little deeper, than just, oh, I read the story, wow, that's sad, or that's, messed up. So the way the book is put together was similar to my first book. You start with the story, and then you start, after you read the story, are questions, and I call them the sound off questions. What do you think?
What do you think? Okay.
And so it's usually 4 or 5 questions just about what you read, and I want to know, what do you think? Do you think she made a bad decision because she's just stupid? Or do you think, something, what I think, because of what happened a long time ago, may have brought her to this point? And so I start with sound off questions, and then I move into a fun little piece called Just Cleaning. And these are activities that I put together that I thought would support making better choices.
Okay.
So, or at least have you thinking about the choices that you made. So Just Cleaning is really just an activity based on some of the information in the book to help you think and make better choices. And then finally, the Girl Queen Challenge is just a short challenge that allows you to think about, okay, what am I going to do this week, to make better choices? So in some cases, I may ask you to think about someone you need to apologize to.
Okay.
Or I might say, go and write something down several times and speak it over yourself every day, maybe like an affirmation or
Okay.
something like that. Or take a look at your friends and answer these 5 questions about your friends. Determine if they're good friends, or do you need to evaluate your friendships? Different things, in different challenges. But I make an effort to try to create those after every story.
After every story.
Mhm.
So, for example, in the story here, Now What is the title of this chapter
Yeah.
or this story. And this is, I also want to mention that you do a kind of an underscore with something that's scriptural.
Yes.
So you excuse me, now what? You say, give all your worries and anxiety to God because He cares for you. Right, so we're getting that out of the scripture in First Peter,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But this is the story about how Queenie is dealing with confronting and following up with the young person that she lost her virginity to, right?
Yeah.
And as you go through the story here, you say that where is it? Not in the just, yes, in Just Cleaning, you're saying one of the questions was look at the first 10 songs on your playlist and how many of these songs talk about having sex or how many of them have sexual language in it.
Yeah.
Right. So it really, it's not just for somebody to have a conversation within a group, for example.
Yeah.
You can actually just sit here and be interactive with yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And this also tackled the topic of sexting.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what we see a lot today. A lot of sexting. And so the question becomes, okay, sex. Sex is a normal part of life. I get that, but how much of it is on your mind?
Yeah.
With your playlist, with your pictures on your phone, with you watching TV. So this is just like a quick activity just to kind of evaluate, okay, how much of your stuff is sexual?
Because we are in a society that is so sexualized, right? Like you said, it's in your face.
In your face.
And if you don't do anything to protect yourself against it, it can really just get in your psyche at a really young age.
Absolutely. We talk about that in a little further, sometimes in groups, about your eyes and your ears and the importance. They're like doors, and like what you put in them literally become a part of you. And so, like, for example, like a song, how you listen to a song over and over again.
That's right.
And you can repeat it. And even if you haven't heard that song in years, when it comes on, you can still recite every word.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
And you know how long that's
September.
been.
Yeah.
And so this is just a part of, getting young ladies to at least acknowledge, oh, my eyes and my ears are important. I need to protect them. What am I watching? What am I hearing over and over again? What's getting in me? What's becoming a part of me? And so that's what this particular activity is really about.
And I love also when we think about it, right? It really is programming, right? What comes in through the eyes, the ears, what we start repeating, right? It all starts to create a picture in our heart, right? And then Proverbs tells us, doesn't it? Watch what goes into your heart because when it's time for you to live your life, what do? You live out of the stuff that's in here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you also have this structured where you have some affirmations.
Yes, absolutely. So the queen codes. I don't think I mentioned that. So after the activity, there are these queen codes, and basically I say, hey, these are the codes that young queens live by. But really, I got many of them from the book of Proverbs, and the essence of this book is really about the book of Proverbs. Providing solutions or better choices in the form of maybe a proverb, or just a quote, and so I've used many of the proverbs. I just kind of tweaked it a little bit for it to for them to get it really
Okay.
easily.
Kind of regular language.
Yeah, just regular
Okay.
language.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's what the Queen codes are about.
Wonderful. Because I saw here, if I could just pull out a couple of these,
Sure.
it says, hold your head up high always.
Yes.
You are God's masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And what an affirmation that is, because for so many young women,
Mm-hmm.
right, and even women of our age, we have never heard that, or we don't hear it often enough.
Yeah.
So to be able to look at this, to go through it even after such a traumatic story,
Mm-hmm.
but then to come up on this affirmation that says,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, killing yourself is never an option,
Yeah.
right? And you hold your head up high. You are God's masterpiece.
Yes.
And you can go back and keep looking at this and looking at this
Yes.
and really just reprogram,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can reprogram your heart to
Yeah.
really believe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And actually turn the page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if I could just mention that I had a mentor of mine say to me that it's important that people always leave your presence inspired or, knowing what to do, So it's like I never wanted to leave anybody with just a sad story. It's like, okay, the story is sad, but let's get inspired to do better.
Yeah.
I always wanted to make sure people are lifted, when they leave my presence or when they read a book like this.
Yeah.
And so I remember her telling me that. And so that's what I try to do in every chapter.
So this one, and of course, I have my favorite girls because Queenie's friends have lived. They've done some interesting things. I mean,
Yes.
you go from the experiences of, okay, we're gonna sneak out to go to a party, right? Which I think everybody who is listening or watching can relate to, right? You're plotting, right? And you're they even pretended to be asleep.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They pretended to be asleep so that they could run out and go to this party because of the boys, right?
Yeah, it's always the boys.
It's always the boys or somebody who makes your nostrils flare, right? And even that, though it started off in a certain level of innocence, ended up having a fair amount of trauma for them, right? But what I also like that we were able to work together is that there is no judgment. Like in every story, in every page, right? Even in your responses and your telling of the story, there's no judgment. There's a level of understanding, which I would dare say came from your personal experiences with these stories.
Yeah, I definitely didn't want anyone to walk away feeling judged or like, oh man, I did this. I'm a bad person. Because I find that most people aren't bad people. They just make bad choices. And so it was important to, show you these young ladies, but to show you that even though they made a bad choice, life does not have to be over for them. There's still hope, and hope is something that is very important to me. We all need hope. We need to know that, okay, I messed up. I really messed up this time, but that there's hope. There's someone to say, it's okay. Let's move forward.
Yeah.
And so that's me being that for these young ladies.
Yeah. I feel like hope walks together with courage, right? Because you have to believe that things will be better in order for you to even try again, right? So it goes with that action. And I think I've told you that Yasha is one of my favorite girls. Her story is it's so real, and yet it's not often discussed in the church world, right? Because Yasha is a church girl. She's a church girl, y'all. She's a church girl. Okay, and she's a church girl who got caught up in pornography. And I think that to be able to put this into a story that is like, close your mouth. I see you. You're like, what? What is she doing? So, in order to tell this story from a relatable place of being 16 years old, right? Yasha's 16. Yeah, Yasha's 16. And you are, just to talk a little bit about your one of the parts of your life. Tell us what you do and what your role is at your church.
Oh, okay.
What are you doing with the young women at your church?
So I'm a youth director at my local church.
Okay.
And I've been doing that for several years now. I love doing it. And I work with both male and females, but I really spend a lot of time with the young ladies. And I use my book to encourage them, and just I give them a safe space to share without judgment, because it's not easy, to be able to say, I'm struggling with this, especially in church. You don't want to be judged. You don't want to be ridiculed. And we unfortunately found a lot of that in church. I hope things are better. But what do you do if you are struggling in an area? Who can you talk to? You should be able to find someone in church to talk to, you would think. But unfortunately, that was not the case.
So what's the message that you heard? Let's see if it's different than the message I heard about sex in church. What was the message you heard?
Don't do it.
Okay, we might have gone to the same church. Yeah, we might have gone to the same church. Don't do it. Don't do it.
That was a period.
Yeah.
Like they say today, period, is don't do it.
Don't do it. And then let's not talk about this ever again.
Nothing else we have to talk about.
Yeah. Yep. Don't kiss. Don't nothing. Yeah. Boys are awful, or the opposite sex, or whatever. And just don't do it. And then you realize, okay, well, you either find yourself in a situation, right? Yeah. Or you realize it's actually not bad. Yeah. Right? But I didn't receive any instruction about what to do in a particular situation. Yeah. So now I'm left to kind of either go with my feelings or be caught up in a whole bunch of shame. Yeah. Right? Absolutely. There's no foundation. So I like Yasha's story because she was introduced to pornography through a friend of hers, right, who showed her a website, and then next thing you know, again, the programming, right, Proverbs 4, how about the Bible really knows what it's talking about, okay? Yeah, how about that? Be careful what goes into your eyes and your ears. Yeah. Because she watched the video, and then she just couldn't get away from the images in that video. Could not shake it. And then, at first she thought it was cringy, but then in going about her regular life, it kept coming back to her. The images, yes. And so that programming pulled her to go back and do it on her own, go searching that stuff up on her own. And Yasha used to be a real A student,
like a
straight A student.
But now she's struggling because she doesn't know what to do. Yeah. She is now immersed in watching porn. Yeah. And again, she's a church girl, but she's like, I'm not going. That's the last place I can go. Right. Can't talk to her parents. She said she couldn't. She loved them, and she knew that they loved her. Oh, yeah. But how do you broach that subject with your parents who have this idea of what you're doing when you're not in their presence? Right? And what you've been doing is very, very different, right? It's a lot of shame attached to it. Yeah. You can't tell mom and dad, you know? I mean, you're like, mom and dad would be so hurt, disappointed, angry, or embarrassed by me. Yeah. So she doesn't tell anybody. Yeah. And it just keeps going on. It keeps going on and on to the point where she begins to do things to herself. Yeah. So she begins engaging in masturbation. Yeah. Because these images are, her body is doing things. Right. And she feels like, I have to do this, to feel better. And so she finds herself struggling with pornography and masturbating. Wow. Wow. And so it just kept getting, it seemed like her spiral just kept spinning further and further down, didn't it? Yeah. And I think one of the things I need to mention is, while all this is happening, she's saying God really probably hates me. Because now she feels like she's done something that's, God is really against. And so now she can't even, she's kind of shut God off in her life. It's like, he doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't want to hear from me. I'm
Yeah.
just here. I'm in this by myself.
There is this particular paragraph that it just stuck out to me. It said the video played in my mind all day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I couldn't wait to go back home so that I could watch another one. As soon as I got back home, I ran to my room, locked my door, put the laptop on the bed, went to the website, found another video, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she begins to detail how she slipped down into the
Mm-hmm.
act of masturbating.
Yes.
And then she said here, she says, it felt so good, but when it was over, I felt so guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It felt good, but was it good? I wasn't sure. I felt like I'd let somebody down, especially God. And it reminded me, and then she was God mad at me?
Mm-hmm.
Then she started crying. Then she was depressed, but then she couldn't stop herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then she promised God she'd never do it again,
Mm-hmm.
but then she couldn't stop herself. And I thought, wow, you know, there's just so much within that whole thought process that
Mm-hmm.
she's going through,
Yeah.
because it's like where the Bible says that I think it was Paul, right? He
Mm-hmm.
said, "Don't judge me, okay? I don't have my concordance with me," but he was saying, there's this
Oh,
war on
yeah.
the inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I don't want to do, I end up doing. The
Doing.
thing I want to do, I don't do,
Yeah.
right? And I find that there's this law at work in me.
Yeah,
right?
It's a struggle.
It's a
Like
struggle.
my flesh is saying yes, yes, but my spirit, it's like no. I'm warring.
Yeah.
And Yasha's 16 years old. She
Right.
doesn't have anyone, or she doesn't think she has anyone to say, wait,
Right.
put the brakes on this,
Right.
and to minister to her. And so now she's going through a lot, and unfortunately, Yasha's not that uncommon.
Not that uncommon. Exactly. If you just imagine if Yasha had a foundation where in regular conversation, not hitting her over the head,
Mhm.
not looking down or frowning at her, but to say, you know what, you might feel some feelings,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But here is how you deal with
Yes.
that, right? As opposed to leaving her to run off on her own, get caught up in something that she has no boundaries
Mhm.
to prepare her for, no structure whatsoever,
Yeah.
right? I felt bad for her.
Mhm.
I did. I felt like, here's a girl, a child, really,
Mhm.
looking to do right and stumbling on something. It's like when you discover the chocolate is really good, but you can't have it all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and you have no filter
Mhm.
that says, okay, have this much and no more, or don't have this
Right.
yet, right? It's like you try to tell kids, don't have sweets before dinner. It's
Right.
going to mess up your dinner,
Mhm.
right? Then you get older and you realize that having
Right.
dessert is the privilege of being an adult.
Right.
Having
Right.
dessert
Right.
first, right?
Mhm.
Having dessert for breakfast. But that's a whole other conversation. But it is, something else that she said here was, I've never heard of a girl being hooked on porn before.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It's something.
Yeah, and this is only boys do that. And I can't tell my counselor, but my counselor has told me that my grades are slipping.
Mhm.
So the things that we get involved in, the things that we indulge in, they start to show up and affect other parts of our lives.
Yeah, you can't hide it.
That's so good.
You can't hide it.
Yeah, not for long.
Yeah, it will show up.
Yeah.
And so it's a sad story, but it's not an uncommon story.
Yeah.
And I point out that Yasha, when she says girls don't do this kind of stuff, and that's the thing. Girls do this all the time. It's just they don't tell anyone because of the shame that's attached to it. Boys, it's like, oh, that's just what boys do.
Mhm.
But girls, it's
Right.
like, but you don't do that. Like,
Right.
That's wicked. That's terrible.
And that leads us to a whole other, or could lead us to a whole other conversation about, why society believes that women are not sexual,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do that with a
It'd be a good
bigger
conversation,
group.
though.
Yeah, bigger group. But it would be a good conversation because you end up being, you have people who are repressed, who never get to know themselves, never get to see themselves in a particular way.
Mhm.
And then that affects one group and then another group, then
Mhm.
another group. And soon you have folk who just don't know, they're not operating in the fullness of
Right.
who God called them to be, right? Because when we show up, we want to show up, as you know, with his daughters,
Mhm.
right? I am so passionate about us understanding that God has created us as whole women,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
That we are his creation
Mhm.
and that we're holy women, incomparable and
Yes.
supernatural, right?
Absolutely.
But if there's a part of your life where you don't fully express yourself or fully understand yourself, then you're missing out on the fullness of who God has called you to be.